You're listening to Front Row with me, Kirsty Lang, and as you can probably hear by the tweeting birds and the rustling leaves beneath my feet, I have left the stuffy studio and I'm in Lee Woods, which is a forest on the outskirts of Bristol. I'm surrounded by 5 stranded fishing boats, real ones, sort of nautical ghosts nestling under the trees. This is in fact an art installation from Luke Jerram, who's famous for putting street pianos in cities all over the world, and his giant water slide made headlines when it was installed in Bristol city centre last year. Well, the artist is just over there on one of the boats. I'm going to go and talk to him now. Luke, arriving here in the middle of this forest, I mean, first of all, can I just say, what an extraordinary sight, these stranded, sort of run-down boats. I wasn't expecting them to be real. These are real boats.
Yeah, these are all boats at the end of their lives, all fishing boats bought on eBay and Gumtree for a couple of £100 around the south coast. And we're doing them all up and cleaning them up a little bit. But
can you just show me what you were doing just in there? I mean, this is quite a rusty old can of a boat, isn't it? What was it before?
This fishing boat is actually a converted lifeboat. Maybe 20, 30 years ago, this boat was, converted into a fishing boat. And I've just bought it, and it's just full of old kind of compasses covered in dust and life rings and life jackets. We even got kind of waders that some fishermen would have worn. It's, quite atmospheric. Everything's covered in cobwebs.
Ropes down there, and, I can always smell the salty air on it. So, I mean, presumably that's part of this, is that they had to be real boats. If you'd built them yourself, it wouldn't have had quite the impact, would it?
No, these boats are right at the end of their life, and the one on just the other side of that tree was built in 1939 in Lewes, so it's 76 years old and was used for about 40 years catching sea bass and herring. Yeah, there's something quite romantic about them, but they're also quite sculptural objects in the landscape.
Well, let's just go and sit over by the stern, actually, shall we, here? What were some of the inspirations and images that came into your mind when you were making this?
I was actually listening to Radio4, and there was, on Shortcuts, a programme about a ghost ship that had been washed out from Japan. It spent 2 years floating across the Pacific towards Canada, and in the end, this huge trawler, all covered in algae and barnacles, had to be blown up by the Canadian Coast Guard.
Picture a retired fishing boat called Rio Unmaro. It's on its way out to the Pacific. It's pulled out by the ocean.
It had just been moored. It had been retired from service.
This is Gabriel Lubel.
So it was just sitting around doing nothing.
He's a composer living in the US.
And then the tsunami hits, and after that...
I certainly had mixed feelings that this vessel had survived the Pacific, and to think of the things that this ship probably experienced post-tsunami. It's kind of a harrowing tale for a small ship like that, and to say, wow, this ship has survived for so long, and here we are to finally put it to rest.
Now, a lot of your previous projects have involved making cities more fun. So, you put pianos in city centres with signs on saying, play me, or your 300-foot huge water slide in the city centre street in Bristol. Do you believe in art being fun? Is that, part of what drives you as an artist?
I believe that art can be made accessible. So I try and make art that can be appreciated in all sorts of different levels. So when a family stumble across these boats, kids will be they'll run around and have fun on them. But a marine biologist or an environmentalist or a fisherman will look at these boats in a different way. So I try and create artwork that can be unpacked and that has multiple doors of entry. So, that's my intention between a lot of the artwork that I make.
But presumably a lot of people will just stumble across this artwork because this is a very popular walking place. And, I've just seen somebody cycle past and do a double take when they saw these boats. There's the serendipity aspect of it as well.
Yeah, I suppose I want to make people ask questions. So, have these boats been dumped here by some sort of collapsed fishing industry? Or perhaps a giant tidal surge came in and dumped them here? Or maybe the coastline has shifted. I want people to ask questions as well as sort of be taken by the beauty and sculptural quality of these boats.
Now, this project, your boat project in the woods, is one of 6 projects that's been funded by the Arts Council England to mark Bristol's selection as European Green Capital. So far, one project has been cancelled, another been downsized, the art director's been sacked, and it's all been quite sort of political. Has that impacted on you as an artist?
No, not at all. I plough my own furrow, as it were.
You've just been hiding out in the woods, haven't you?
I have been hiding out in the woods. No, I've been working really hard. You know, I can be relied upon to actually do what I say. You know, so when I say I'm going to put a flotilla of fishing boats in the woods, that's actually what's going to happen. It's slightly terrifying sometimes, but yeah, I'm very scared of messing up. You know, to the extent that I'll actually deliver.
And presumably because it's a green project, there are all sorts of environmental concerns that you have to take into account as an artist, because you have to get these boats here, and then there's concerns about crowds and heavy lifting equipment. I mean, how much of a hassle has that been?
Yeah, it's been quite a journey. We've obviously worked incredibly hard to make sure the installation was installed in a very safe way, with minimum impact on the habitat. So we've done surveys on the landscape. We've worked out our carbon dioxide emissions for the project as well. A whole range of questions have been answered over a period of 5 or 6 months.
What I love looking around is noticing, I mean, all these boats have got names. There's the Jean Marie and the Seahorse, and what's this one we're sitting on now?
This is Gloria Jean.
Gloria Jean. It's like it's a wealth of untold stories, isn't it, these boats in the wood?
Everything's covered in rust. There's moss and lichen growing on the boats where they've been left for several months, even before I pick them up. The aesthetic of decay is something very beautiful, especially in this sort of dappled light coming through the trees.
Do you think there's a trend at the moment towards more immersive art? Because you certainly see that in the theatre, and then I'm thinking of Carsten Holler's slides in the Turbine Hall at the Tate Modern, and Jeremy Deller's inflatable Stonehenge. Do you see yourself as part of that trend?
Yeah, I think so. I studied performance art at college, and I realised back then that actually it was often the performer on stage that was having the most amount of fun, whilst we sort of sat in the audience watching. So certainly with a number of my projects, like Play Me I'm Yours, the street piano project and the slide, I wanted to invert that relationship, to put the audience at the centre of things and give them the most amount of fun and the most amount of pleasure.
Artist Luke Jerram and his installation Withdrawn can be seen at Lee Woods in Bristol from tomorrow until the 6th of September. And for details of all the concerts and theatrical events that's going to be performed around the boats, there's a link on the Front Row website. On Monday,